Israel, a country near the Mediterranean Sea, and Palestine, where many Arab people live, have been in conflict for a long time. The fight is mostly over land, like the West Bank and Gaza Strip, which are areas Israel controls. Over the years, things have gotten worse, with many fights and violence between the two sides. To understand why this conflict started, we need to look way back in history. A long time ago, in the 17th century BC, three important leaders of the Jewish people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, moved to a place called Canaan. This area is where modern-day Israel, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip are, along with parts of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. People called it the Land of Israel, the Promised Land Palestine, or the Holy Land. Later, in 1000 BC, a king named Saul started the Israelite kingdom. After him, King David took over, made Jerusalem the capital, and his son, King Solomon, built the first temple there. This history is important because it helps us understand why both sides feel connected to the land. A long time ago, after King Solomon died, his big kingdom was split into two. The northern part was called the Kingdom of Israel, with Samaria as its capital, and the southern part was called the Kingdom of Judah, with Jerusalem as its capital. Most of the people living there were Jewish, but over time, many other groups came and took over the land. These conquests made the Jewish population smaller. One of the groups that took over was the Roman Empire. They even changed the name of the land from Judah to Palestine to try and separate the Jewish people from their land. During this time, a new religion called Christianity started as part of Judaism, but later became big and spread across the Roman Empire. Then, in the 7th century, Arab armies came and brought Islam to the land. They built the Dome of the Rock on the spot where the Jewish Second Temple used to be. That's how Jerusalem became a very special and holy city for three religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. A long time ago, Christians in Jerusalem were treated badly by a group called the Seljuk Turks, who wanted to take over more land. To help, Christians in Europe started big fights called the Crusades to try to take back the Holy City. During this time, many Jewish people were hurt, and some decided to travel to new places, mostly around Western Europe. Later, from the 1500s to World War I, a group called the Ottoman Empire ruled the Holy Land and much of the Middle East. People started calling the land Palestine. Around the same time in Europe, more Jewish people began joining something called the Zionism movement. This movement was about creating a Jewish homeland in the place where their ancestors had lived a long time ago. By the early 1900s, tens of thousands of Jewish people started moving back to the area, which was called Israel and Palestine, and was then controlled by the British. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and the British and French decided how to divide up its land in the Middle East. After World War I, Britain took control of some parts of the Middle East, including a place called Palestine. They promised to create a home for Jewish people there, which was part of something called the Balfour Declaration in 1923, but the land was already home to many Arabs, and both Jews and Arabs said it belonged to them. This caused a lot of fighting and tension between the two groups. In the 1930s, more Jewish people moved to Palestine because they were afraid of being hurt during the Nazi rule in Germany. To slow things down, Britain started limiting how many Jews could move there. But this made some Jews very upset, so they formed groups to fight back against both the Arabs and the British. Then came the Holocaust, where almost 6 million Jewish people were killed during Nazi Germany's rule. After the war, even more Jewish people left Europe to find safety in Palestine, but this only made the fighting with the Arabs worse. It was a really difficult and sad time for everyone. Britain was having a hard time dealing with the situation, so they decided to leave the area. After World War II, the United Nations came up with a plan to divide Palestine into two countries, one for the Jewish people and one for the Arabs. They also wanted Jerusalem to be a special international city. But here's the problem. The plan gave the Jewish people, who were only 1/3 of the population, more land, about 56.5%. The Arabs weren't happy with this and said no to the plan. They even started forming their own groups to fight back. Not long after, when Britain officially left Palestine, the Jewish people announced the creation of Israel as an independent country. This started a new and even bloodier conflict between the Jews and the Palestinian Arabs. As soon as Israel declared itself a country, a war broke out between the Arabs and the Jews. This war became known as the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. A long time ago, 5 Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, got together to try to create a unified Arab Palestine. But after about a year of fighting, they stopped and agreed on a ceasefire. When the fighting ended, most of the land, including West Jerusalem, became part of Israel. Jordan took East Jerusalem and the West Bank, and Egypt took over the Gaza Strip. Sadly, this led to over 750,000 Palestinians losing their homes and being forced to leave the land their families had lived on for hundreds of years. They call this day Al-Nakba, which means the catastrophe. But things didn't get better after that. There were more fights and wars between the Arabs and the Jews over the years. In 1967, the Six-Day War happened after tensions and arguments kept growing. Even though the war was short, Israel won and took control of a lot of land. They gained the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt. These events made the situation between the groups even more complicated. The Sinai Peninsula was given back to Egypt after Egypt and Israel signed a peace treaty. But after the war, most Palestinian families who had left their homes couldn't go back. Instead, they had to live in places like Gaza, the West Bank, and nearby countries like Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. Over time, more and more Israelis started living in areas where Palestinians lived, like the West Bank and Gaza. This led to the creation of a group called the PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization, in 1964. The PLO wanted to make Palestine an independent country. At first, they were based in Jordan and launched attacks on Israel, but they were later forced to move to Lebanon, where they continued fighting and even started carrying out terrorist attacks. The fighting went on for years. Israel even invaded Lebanon to push the PLO out of Beirut. Eventually, the PLO agreed to share the land between Palestine and Israel. But during this time, more and more Jewish settlers were moving into Palestinian areas. In 1987, something called the First Intifada began. It started in a refugee camp called Jabalia after an Israeli military truck crashed into 2 Palestinian vans, killing 4 people. This made many Palestinians very angry, and they started rising up against Israel in a violent protest. This was the beginning of the First Intifada. A big fight broke out, causing a lot of sadness, and many people lost their lives. But after all that, there was some hope for peace. Israel and the PLO signed something called the Oslo Accords to try and make things better. In these agreements, the West Bank was split into 3 parts. Area A was for the Palestinians to control. Area B was shared by both Palestinians and Israel. Area C was controlled only by Israel. Later, more peace talks happened in 2000, but the 2 sides couldn't agree on important things, like who gets to be in Jerusalem, what happens to refugees, and the growing number of Jewish communities on Palestinian land. Things got worse when Ariel Sharon, who became Israel's prime minister later, visited a very special place in Jerusalem called the Temple Mount. It's home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and many Palestinians felt hurt by his visit. This started the Second Intifada, which was another period of fighting. The fighting finally stopped when Israel left Gaza, but they kept building homes in the West Bank and the arguments didn't end. Why is there a conflict between Israel and Hamas? Well, Hamas is a group that wants to replace Israel with an Islamic state. A long time ago, there was a fight between 2 groups, Hamas and Fatah. Fatah was in charge of the Palestinian Authority, but after the fight, Hamas took control of Gaza. After that, Israel blocked off Gaza, and this caused a lot of problems, leading to many fights and wars like Operation Cast Lead, Operation Pillar of Defense, and Operation Protective Edge. In 2014, Hamas and Fatah decided to work together and form a national unity government. Then, in 2018, the United States moved its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This upset Palestinians because it felt like the U.S. was saying Jerusalem is just for Israel, even though it's important to both sides. In 2021, things got worse again. Arguments and violence started in East Jerusalem, leading to more fighting. Finally, Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations helped stop the violence with a ceasefire on May 21st. Things might seem quiet now, but the problems between Israel and Palestine aren't solved. It's like a ticking time bomb that could go off any time. Thanks for learning with us. If you found this helpful, don't forget to give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more history videos.